Welcome to Cities on the Move. I'm your host, Stephanie Passingham. Sonia Anderson from Frost, Minnesota loves everything Scandinavian. She started her work by learning rosemalling and now offers a wide variety of delightful gifts in her very own shop. Later in the program, we'll visit with Larry Bach of the U.S. Postal Service to learn more about how the system operates and what changes may be coming down the road. And finally, we'll visit the Mayo High School Planetarium. This amazing facility can host preschoolers to university scholars with its latest technology. Studying the sky has never been so interesting. We'll have all this and more. Stay tuned for Cities on the Move. Sonia Anderson isn't quite full-blooded Scandinavian, but you would never know it by her passion for the art, food, and traditions of this region. Let's find out more.
My name is Sonia Anderson. I live in Frost, and I operate Nordic World Scandinavian Shop. I've done this for, I think almost 27 years now, and I've started in my a little shop right on our property at our home place. And that worked out really nice. I could be at home and at work. I could sit home in my little farmhouse and meet people from all over the world and still take care of my kids. I have a couple of rooms rented in an office building in Frost. I have a website, so I sell things online, and I do a lot of mail order, and I'm open by appointment. My heritage is Scandinavian. I'm half Norwegian, fourth German, fourth Swedish, and all American, my dad always used to tell us. My husband's family is 100% Norwegian, so there was just a lot of interest in it growing up, although probably not quite so much until I took up rosemalling. I took a class, I actually started with a class in Albert Lee from May Patran in 1974, a long time ago. And I kind of started doing it just to have something to get me out of the house when my children were little. And people, I started rosemalling, and people liked it and they ordered it, so I did more and more, and I took more classes, and I took classes at the Vesterheim Museum. And so that kind of got me interested in the rosemalling. And then, I went up to a gift show thinking maybe I could put something with the rosemalling. And I guess you'd say the rest is history. I just kind of went nuts when I saw this really cool Scandinavian stuff, and it's really been a fun job for me. Rosemalling is kind of an abstract Norwegian flower painting, originally usually done on wooden items. A lot of the strokes are very scrolly and very organic. They kind of start from one point and then just kind of almost grow like a beautiful flowing organic design. They used to do that back, it started probably in about the mid-1700s or so, and really peaked in about the mid-1800s. When I see how dark it must have been in Scandinavia in the winter, they must have had to do something to brighten up those houses. And you see some pictures of these houses with rosemalling all over the walls, all over the ceiling, all over every item they had. The most prominent thing that I see still going on today around here would be food. A lot of the Lutheran Church basement women still get together and make lefse and sell these different items at their bake sales, like there's lefse, rosettes, kringla, krumkaka, all that type of thing. And you do still see a few lutefisk dinners in the area. I love Scandinavian things because they have so much character. Look at this guy here. There is a character. And all I can say is ofta.
Today we're going to talk about a service that most of us use every single day, and it's the U.S. Postal Service. And our special guest today is Larry Bach. He is with the Postal Service, and he's from the Northland District of the Postal Service. Welcome to the program, Larry.
Well, thanks for having me.
Thanks for being here. Well, tell us a little bit, how long have you been with the Postal Service?
I have been with the Postal Service now coming up on 30 years. Wow. So I've been around a long time.
A long time. You've seen quite a few changes.
I have.
You know, we read stories historically about the Pony Express and how mail just was not common at all, and people's methods of communicating have changed drastically over the last century or two. But give us a sense, you've seen the last 30 years, what have you seen changing in the Postal Service?
Well, in the last 30 years, obviously the electronic world has changed how people communicate in this country. And just thinking back, not more than like 10 years ago, people were writing letters, and a lot of messages and bills were coming through the mails. Today that's changed a little bit now, hasn't it? People use things like instant messaging, Twitter, Facebook to communicate. When we look at how bills are paid, a lot of bills are paid electronically. Even our taxes, we do those electronically today. Businesses have changed a little bit. It wasn't too long ago when I was in college looking at a business plan. Either I had to make a phone call and ask the company for a business plan, or much rather write to them and ask for their business plan. Today, you can pick up that right off the internet. So it has changed who we are as a company and also who we are as a society. The Postal Service as a whole has adapted to those changes. We have grown from the internet. Our e-commerce has come a long ways, meaning the packaging business has provided us opportunity. eBay, as an example, has provided us great opportunity to deliver packages. So while we've had a lot of changes in the last 10 years or the last 30 years, there's been opportunity for us also.
All right. Give us a 101 on the Postal Service. What is the scope of operations? What kinds of things do you provide? How big are you? Kind of give us a big picture look at it.
Good deal. If we looked at our mantra, and if our mantra is that we provide efficient economical service universally at a reasonable rate, the question is, how do we do that? We are a company of about 630,000 employees.
Wow.
We are, in fact, the second largest civilian employer in the country. Walmart is a little bit larger than we are in terms of employees. From a fleet perspective, we have a fleet of 219,000 vehicles that move mail throughout the country or deliver mail. That is the largest civilian fleet in the country, second only to the military, which is a non-civilian, which would be a non-civilian fleet. Our retail outlets, imagine this, we have 32,000 retail outlets throughout the country. And how big are we? We have a mailbox virtually on every doorstep in the country, which means we service delivery points, 150 million delivery points 6 days a week. Now, those delivery points are not only residential business, but they're also mailboxes. So from a perspective in terms of how big we are, we're on every doorstep. We provide communication to the country from the United States to its territories outside of the United States. We do international business. So we are a fairly sized, large player in the communication and the commerce market for this country.
Yeah, just downright big. Give us a sense of, as people sometimes discuss the post office and whether it's praise or criticism, talk a little bit about kind of some of the things that I don't want to say are hamstrung by, but some of the conditions that the government places on the Postal Service in terms of you do have to go to every doorstep and you have to provide that service to all of us, and how that impacts what you offer and what you charge, and perhaps speak just briefly about kind of the competition that's coming your way or has been, and how you guys have adapted to that.
Well, let's talk a little bit about 5-day-a-week delivery. Let's start there.
Okay.
Prior to 1983, there were no restrictions on the Postal Service in terms of the number of days a week we would deliver mail.
Okay.
In 1983, an appropriations bill was passed that talks about universal service, and it further defined universal service as we would provide deliveries 6 days a week outside of the 10 holidays that we have, which would then be 5 days a week.
Okay.
When you look at some of those restrictions that we have, that was one of the restrictions that came about. We look at today that we pay back the federal government in terms of pre-funding our retirees. We pay them between $5.1 billion and $5.4 billion since 2006, and that'll take place through 2015. 2015, when you start looking at some of those restrictions that are out there, there is some impacts on the Postal Service when it comes time to making the changes that may be necessary to compete in the environment that we're in today.
Sure. You mentioned a number of those other ways that we're communicating today. Does that drive, I'd like you to touch on just briefly how you determine the rate of a stamp. You know, everyone seems to notice when they talk about first-class stamps and they go up a penny or two or, you know, these incremental amounts. But who makes those decisions?
Well, first let me say this. The Postmaster General just announced last week that our market-dominant products would not have a rate change in 2010, and that would also mean a market-dominant would be a first-class stamp. Now, how do we come about that? Well, we continue to study throughout the Postal Service what it costs us to move a piece of mail from its point of deposit to its point of delivery, and then its processing operations in between. It also takes into account that 14% of America moves annually, and there are fees by which we pay as a company to forward that mail from its from its address of origin to its destination. So those are calculated into the cost of our postage stamp. Now, from a market perspective, when you look at our stamp at 44 cents, how much better can an individual have it to get a service for 44 cents in this country?
Yep. If I handed you this piece of paper, would you drive to my grandma's house for 44 cents?
I'll see what I can do for you.
That is amazing, and I'm sure it has to do with volume and your system, the way it's set up. Let's talk a little bit. You mentioned the 5-day-a-week, 6-day-a-week. The post office has been in the headlines a little bit this past summer and fall, and let's talk about some of those conversations taking place, whether it means closure of post offices or a move back to a 5-day-a-week. What's driving that conversation, and have there been any decisions that have been made?
Well, first off, what's driving it is our revenue shortfalls this year. You know, it's no secret where the American economy is. And when we look at our shortfalls in terms of our operating expenses versus our revenue, we look to be about $2 billion short this year in our revenues. Now, when you look at it from an economic standpoint, some of the things that are driving it are the financial institutes. They were large mailers with us. Mortgage institutions, large mailers with us. Credit card operations, organizations, large mailers with us. Those have all been impacted by the economic downturn that we have in this country. When you compile that with our shortfalls in terms of our workload, it was about 3 years ago we peaked in terms of workload, which meant we collected, processed, and delivered 213 billion pieces of mail annually. Wow. We expect this year, and again, our year just closed out September 30th, to collect, process, and deliver about 180 million pieces of mail. That's a drastic drop for us. Sure. And all that has taken place over the last couple of years. So what's the problem? Well, the problem is we have a house this big. And with the changes in our society, not only from e-commerce, electronic mail, but from where the economy has taken us, we need a house this big. So what are we doing about it as an organization? Well, let's start at the top. Our executive salaries have been frozen, so there are no pay increases for them. We have offered an early out incentive to our employees, both our clerks and mail handlers, and we are expecting about 30,000 of those individuals to take an early out retirement. We have downsized and right-structured our delivery routes, both our city and rural routes, with the shrinkage in our workload. Obviously, our work with our carriers have changed, so we've downsized those. Streamlined our operations. And what that means is in our mail processing operations, we have found that if we have replicated a type of activity in a facility such as Rochester, we may move some of the mail from another processing facility into Rochester and take full advantage of their processing capabilities. Which takes me to this point. You know, in the metropolitan area, the Twin Cities, we have 5 major processing sites. We are currently building a new mail processing site which will take us from 5 down to 2. Okay. Now think about that. All of these redundant activities that we have in 5 major sites will all be done in 2 sites. And that is, you know, transportation, where we're running between 5 sites, our processing equipment that we have in 5 major sites, our maintenance activities that go on, all of that will be reduced to 2 sites. From a cost savings perspective, that is almost paramount for the Postal Service, where we are in a major metropolitan area with 5 sites to take it down to 2 sites.
That makes sense. You're facing the same efficiencies that a regular corporate world would. Do you think that in the end, it will have no impact on, I think of bringing it down to the individual homeowner who has a mailbox out front. Will they see a change in their delivery? You know, do you anticipate a move to 5-day week? And maybe that decision hasn't been made. I know there's just conversation taking place currently. Will it take longer for a letter to get from point A to point B because maybe you're going to route it to a different location to gain some of those efficiencies? Do you think there'll be any impact on the person who still puts a stamp on a letter?
Oh, I don't think so. I think the changes that we're making are currently transparent to the family or to the business that we deliver and collect from today. Now think about this too. If we make a change from 5-day or from 6-day a week to 5-day a week delivery, we already do that 10 weeks out of the year with our holidays. So we have a little experience delivering mail 5 days a week and handling that 6-day a week volume. But interestingly enough, a Gallup poll was taken when the Postal Service first started talking about going to 5-day a week delivery, and 66% of the Americans surveyed in that poll said they would favor the Postal Service going to a 5-day a week delivery. However, they told us something else. They told us that they would support us going to 5-day a week delivery, but they also mentioned that they wanted their post office to remain open 6 days a week so that they could have access to those retail services. They also told us that they wanted access to their P.O. box mail and their remittance mail, like business reply, maybe something that your business does. So they told us some things that we may not have known throughout this survey period, and we are considering those. But you know, when the consideration for 5-day a week delivery comes about, we can only make the recommendation. It's really our elected officials and the administration that will decide whether or not we go to a 5-day a week delivery.
All right. There were some headlines about possible post office closures around the country, and it's my understanding that the discussion, at least that included Minnesota, came down to, no, we're not going to close any right now. Is that correct?
That's correct. First, let's separate. What was talked about in the spring was closing or consolidation of stations and branches. Unlike the closing of a post office, 2 different items that are out there. And I think our American public confuses that. We weren't talking about closing post offices. We were talking about the consolidation of our stations and branch. Now, where does a station and branch exist within the Postal Service? Each community has what would be known as a main post office, whether it's the small little post office or like Rochester, where you have subordinate facilities within the community. We were talking about the subordinate facilities within those communities. Now, when we look at it, you know, why would we consider closing or consolidating those activities within the larger metropolitan areas? Well, we have a lot of rent that we pay on these facilities. If we can consolidate, we eliminate some facilities. How about access to postal services in our larger communities? There is more access to postal services, whether it's through a contract post office or through maybe one of our automated postal centers. So
or buying stamps at the grocery store.
Exactly.
Yep. Makes sense. For those of us in the rural part of the state, we think post offices, but I see that that is different in a larger area.
Yeah. So that's where we were going in terms of our consolidations. We weren't talking about closing post offices.
Right. Very good. Well, lots of information that you can find at your post office and also online information that's available. As Larry has said, they're taking advantage of this new e-world as well. Larry, thanks so much for being with us and telling us about the latest news in the post office. If you have any more questions, be sure to contact your local postmaster. Stay tuned for more Cities on the Move.
Meet Mayor Ted Radke. Ted has been the mayor of Hollandale, Minnesota for 19 years. He and his wife Bertie and their daughter Megan, now grown, moved to Hollandale from Byron, Minnesota. As mayor, Ted recently presided over the opening of a new government center which also houses Riceland Township Hall. He enjoys living in Hollandale because of the good neighbors who care. When he was a child, Ted thought he would grow up to be a farmer. He's right at home in this farming community.
The Mayo High School Planetarium is a world-class facility located right here in the region. It is open to the public and should be on your must-see list this year. Let's check out this great local resource.
You can tell instantly when you visit the website or walk into the classroom. The Mayo High School Planetarium is no ordinary learning center. Planetarium Director Lawrence Muscati has been opening the eyes and minds of Rochester and the surrounding area students to the wonders of the sky for more than 25 years. He has an amazing facility at his disposal for this very purpose. Director Muscati gives us a 101 on what a planetarium is.
It is a virtual reality environment. It's a place where we duplicate the night sky that you can see in your backyard through mechanical optical systems and or a digital projection systems. The other way that I relate to a planetarium, I often call it a gymnasium for the mind. This is a place where we bring students to the classroom to learn about the universe.
This classroom features state-of-the-art technology that is adaptable for all learners.
Well, our planetarium has a lot of different tools that we use to engage students. We have a projection system that duplicates what you see in your own backyard. We also have a digital projection system that allows us to explore the universe as the scientists do. We're able to download real data sets, whether they be from weather satellites or space probes that are looking deep out into the universe. And we also have an adjoining classroom space where we have a digital video globe projector. Our third grade visitors who come to the planetarium take up the problem of how do you know if you're wishing upon a star or a planet. We might have a visiting group that are 8th grade students, and we might want to know how many stars are there in the universe. So we'll actually go through a sample activity and count the number of stars that are visible with our eye. That number, of course, falls short of the many millions that we imagine, and those stars come through because we view them through large telescopes with some sort of detecting devices. So this becomes really a learning laboratory. I like to treat our student visitors not as passive audience members, but as ones that are engaged in some sort of problem solving. So we use the universe as our vehicle to pick up skills that we would apply in life circumstances. I like to think that it's edutainment in many ways, but it is, again, curriculum that is focused on what our state standards are.
Lawrence can also simulate real events that sky watchers in our area may have missed due to weather interference.
The planetarium not only has a projection system, but it has a domed screen. And the screen then allows us to produce, if you will, program that would give you a sense or simulate an event that you might miss because it was cloudy or the weather conditions didn't cooperate. So we do have the capacity to really recreate astronomical events, like a nice, beautiful Northern Lights display, for example.
The avenues for simulated exploration are nearly endless. From preschoolers pretending they are taking off on a rocket, to scholars exploring trillions of light years beyond our planet. Lawrence Muscati has guided some of the most fascinating trips, and he has fielded some very tough questions.
Well, I have to tell you, I always like to say that pound for pound, I get the best questions from kindergarten students, and I'll give you an example of one. I had a student in the front ask me at the end, how did it happen? And I got caught up in explaining how the illusions were created up on our screen, and I came back and I said, did that help? And he looked at me with a very strained look in his face, and he said, no, how did the universe happen? So I have to tell you that this environment is appropriate for preschool through senior citizen. And all of us have a natural curiosity about our Earth and its place in space.
In addition to use by school-based students, the planetarium is available for outside group programming, such as scout groups or adult study groups by reservation. Lawrence shares why he believes the study of the sky is so important.
When I stand out under the night sky, I feel a connection to my ancestors. When you look up at the night sky, this is a place where we've also generated a lot of unanswerable questions. What is the meaning of life? What happens to you when you die? We look at the night sky, we see the first works of human art. We also hear the echoes of the first works of human literature. And I always like to tell myself that the deeper the space, the deeper the thought.
The Mayo High School Planetarium, keeping our region on the move, into space.
Cities on the Move is on the web. Make a comment, ask a question, or share your good idea by visiting our website at ksmq.org.
There are so many fun things to do around the region, and here are just a few you may want to consider. Christmas at the State School in Owatonna, Minnesota will be held Saturday and Sunday, December 4th and 5th from 1 to 4 p.m. at Cottage 11. Join them for cookies, cider, history, and fellowship. And for those of you who would like to learn more about the State School, check out our story in the archives at ksmq.org/citiesonthemove. On December 11th and 12th, the Winona Film Society will be presenting The Journey Back. This film follows a small group of U.S. veterans as they garner support in U.S. schools and churches, then travel back to remote rural villages in Vietnam to build new schools and drill new wells for clean drinking water. They're helping heal the war wounds on both sides with clean water and improved education. A discussion with director Joyce Woodworth follows the film. For more information, check out winonaarts.org. Recently named one of America's prettiest towns by Forbes magazine, spend some time in Lanesboro, Minnesota. The Commonweal Theater's production, The 1940s Radio Hour, will be running November 20th through December 20th. For more information, check out commonwealtheater.org. And if you have an event you'd like to share with our viewers, log on to our website, ksmq.org, and post your information today.
Cities on the Move is on the web. Make a comment, ask a question, or share your good idea by visiting our website at ksmq.org.
Next week on Cities on the Move, we will revisit an old favorite from January of 2008. Sandy Forstner of the Chamber of Commerce, Cheryl Corey of the Convention and Visitors Bureau, and Mayor Tom Steen of Austin are here to tell us all about the exciting plans they had for the city of Austin in 2008. We'll also talk with John Wagner, a talented local artist. And finally, we'll tour the Paramount Theater. This beloved local attraction sports a special elusive resident. We'll find out more. Please join us Tuesday, November 24th at 6:30 p.m. on KSMQ for another edition of Cities on the Move. I'm your host, Stephanie Passingham. Good night.
Production of this program is made possible in part through a grant from the Blandon Foundation.